News next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So yesterday it was announced that DOJ is walking away from those cases that Jack Smith was attempting to prosecute against President Trump. But that is not the end of the situation, not with Smith and not with Trump's legal wranglings. Don't forget, he has a sentencing hearing scheduled in New York on November 26th.
Oh, that's right. Just in time for Thanksgiving.
And if I'm Trump,
yeah,
I am not going to move that Merchant set aside that verdict. I am going to show up on November 26th and just sit there and what do you got, Judge?
Yeah, what do you want?
What do you and Alvin Bragg want to do?
Yep, get in his face.
I want a moment because allowing people to walk away from what they did is not good enough. And so we still have the matter of Merchant. We still have the matter of Fani Willis and her lover. We still have, the DOJ under Garland and Jack Smith where there needs to be more of a reckoning than just allowing them to skulk away.
Right, don't let them
And we have the civil case,
Oh.
With the hundreds of billions of dollars judgment against the Trump organization that was brought by New York State Attorney General Letitia James and the judge in that case, too, Engoron. So all these people need to be addressed. By the way, I would also include, even though there was no prosecution as of this point, the Arizona Attorney General, Chris Mays, that was that was launching an investigation as to whether Trump's statements about Liz Cheney that were completely bastardized by the D.C. press corps constituted a criminal threat on someone's life. I want an accounting from Chris Mays, too. Letitia James yesterday spoke about the outcome of the election and that she's ready for retribution. They've got contingency plans.
So here we are. We've studied their platforms.
Oh my gosh.
We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready. We're ready to respond to their attacks.
What is she?
We're ready to respond to any attempts to cut or eliminate any funding to the great state of New York, as the governor outlined.
All about the money.
So despite what has happened on the national stage, we will continue to stand tall in the face of injustice, revenge, or retribution.
Well, as Trump said, his revenge is to get Americans' lives improved post-haste. That's his revenge, is America doing better. But he can outsource some of this to Department of Justice, for example, not for revenge, but for accountability. And I know that accountability for the left and revenge are synonyms, but they're not. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Professor William Jacobson, the clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School. He's also the founder of the legalinsurrection.com site and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation and the Equal Protection Project, too. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
You're representing Donald Trump, if you were, hypothetical. You're representing Trump in the documents case, and you've got that November 26th sentencing hearing. What would you recommend?
Yeah, that New York State case is involving the bookkeeping entries. The Florida case is the classified documents case, which is thrown out of court, and the D.C. one is the conspiracy case, which is going nowhere. So I think that, first of all, people need to understand next week, November 12th, the judge will rule on whether the Supreme Court's immunity ruling requires either a new trial or that the verdict be thrown out. And that is, if the judge is looking for an off-ramp, that's the easiest one. which is that some of the evidence introduced at the trial, which predated the Supreme Court's ruling, so the judge wouldn't have to blame himself for letting it in. Some of that evidence involved conduct that was protected by presidential immunity, and therefore the trial verdict needs to be overturned, and there either needs to be a new trial or the case thrown out. So that could come next week. Everybody's focused on the date later.
Right. But let me ask you a question about that. If I'm Trump, I mean, just taking the attitude that I would take. I don't know if Trump wants to be this aggressive, but I'd withdraw my appeal of the conviction.
Ooh.
Can I do
that? No, I would not. I would follow through with the process.
No, I know, but as the person convicted, if I wanted to withdraw the appeal before the appellate court in New York, couldn't I?
Well, there's no appeal yet from the criminal conviction because they're actually, while everybody refers, or the Democrats refer to Trump as a convicted criminal, there's been no judgment of conviction entered. There's a jury verdict. There's a verdict of guilt, but the judge now has to rule whether that will be entered as a judgment of conviction, and that's going to come next week. So he's not convicted. There's nothing he could appeal right now. There is no appeal.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, right. So it's right. It's just, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Refreshing my recollection of the case. Thank you. So this is they filed briefs suggesting that the Supreme Court decision, it would necessitate setting aside the verdict. That's where we're at.
That's right, and that ruling will come next week. And if, like I said, if the judge is looking for an off ramp now that Trump is president-elect, that's the easiest off ramp. But if he rules that verdict stands and is going to be entered as a judgment of conviction, then you have the sentencing shortly before Thanksgiving. And I agree with you. I would simply take the position that it's illegitimate, that you can't do it, and see what the judge does.
Wouldn't that be something if they put him in jail?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely, even if he weren't president-elect, that there would be immediate detention for incarceration, or how like when they lead the criminal out of the courtroom in handcuffs, immediately remanded for custody. I doubt that would happen. That's going to raise all sorts of issues because he still has secret Service protection, even if he weren't president-elect. But now that he's president-elect, how would you even do that? So I think there's close to zero chance that would happen.
Okay.
No, I mean, the problem is he's going to take the off-ramp that you just described, and then there's not going to be accountability. I hope he doesn't, but he's going to. But if he didn't, then when he sentences him ostensibly to jail time on November 26th, if I'm Trump, I say, I want to serve my sentence right now. Put me in jail. Because I don't
that much.
My point is to say, like, to get to the larger question is, if he takes this off ramp when we know this was a sham from the beginning, then how do you get any accountability for Bragg and Merchan in this case?
Well, that's separate. You can't get it in this case, and you're not going to get it against.
Generally.
Yeah, I think the Trump DOJ, and maybe you need a special prosecutor here, special counsel here, needs to investigate the Alvin Bragg bringing of this case and whether any of Trump's constitutional rights were violated, whether there was conspiracy, whether there was a falsification of government records, because we have the curious situation here where a very high-ranking assistant attorney general from the Biden administration, went to New York City to lead this prosecution.
Yeah, right.
There must be communications. So I think the way you get accountability against Alvin Bragg and this whole prosecution is to investigate it. Now, I don't know that anything was done unlawfully or anything like that, but I think there's certainly enough to investigate it, and I think that's how you'll get it. And the same with the case brought by Jack Smith, the two cases brought by Jack Smith. Was anything improper done there, or any records? I mean, all those things can be investigated and should be investigated, and including the New York State Attorney General who ran for office promising to get Trump, and then brought a novel case that probably is going to get thrown out on appeal. So again, I'm not saying she did anything illegal or even necessarily, unethical, but I think these are worth investigating, where the prosecution function has been so clearly politically weaponized. And in the New York State Attorney General case, she wasn't shy about it. Okay,
No.
She ran for office saying, "I'm going to get Trump and his family."
But
Well,
what was it with that press conference yesterday? Both her and Kathy Hochul, vowing to continue to go after Trump for another 4 years. I mean, she looked scared and angry, which is not a good combination.
No, my take on it is she's very nervous, okay, because she, for the past several years, have a massive bureaucracy behind her. I mean, the New York State Attorney General's office is huge, as I'm sure it is in Illinois and other major states. I mean, so she had the full weight of the state behind her to go after Trump, and she is now looking at the full weight of the federal government, which is bigger, going after her. So I think she's very scared. I think she's setting it up that she's being victimized, so she's portraying herself as the victim. She's trying to bring in other political resources. I mean, she's talking about fighting budget cuts. That's not the role of the state attorney general to fight federal budget cuts, okay?
No, right. But
there's something strange here.
Well, that's a good distillation of all that. Thank you. And that's why you're the Cornell law professor and I'm not. The Letitia James thing, this is her trying to play the role still of sort of the protector of the public from this fraudster Trump when she had a strong hand, at least from a political power perspective. And now when she doesn't, I'm not going to let him come in and seek vengeance on me, hurt you to seek vengeance on me for a legitimate prosecution. That's what she's trying to do. But as you say, a DOJ that just investigates the investigators and the investigation and let's see what they turn up. No, I think that's exactly right. And that goes for, would you say, a relook at what those IRS whistleblowers had to say about the Hunter Biden investigation, because that ropes in several agencies, including the FBI, the Fulton County State's Attorney's Office as well. Everybody needs to be subjected to the who investigates the investigators paradigm.
I agree with that on the Georgia case, on the Fannie Willis case. I do not see Trump doing anything to encourage an investigation of the Biden family. The very interesting thing about Trump is while he is constantly portrayed in the media as an extremely vindictive person, he's actually not. I mean, what did he do that was vindictive in 2016? He, having run for office in a debate saying, "You'd be in jail, Hillary, if I were president." As soon as he got elected, he said, "We're not going to go after her."
No, it wouldn't be good for the country.
Yeah, but that was then, and this is now.
I don't see him doing anything as to Hunter Biden at all. I mean, if Joe Biden doesn't pardon him from federal offenses, I wouldn't be shocked if Trump, to be magnanimous, said, "Well, I'm going to do it because it's in the interest of the country." I do not see Trump doing anything to go after the Biden family. But prosecutors who abused him is a different story.
Yeah, but there's a separate issue though, and I'm not. You may be right about Hunter Biden. That wouldn't surprise me either. And I'm not saying he's going to go after Hunter or even the Biden family. But the investigation into Hunter Biden, the decisions that were made, the special treatment that was detailed by those IRS whistleblowers. I mean, that incorporates Weiss, that incorporates the FBI. So you still need accountability on the law enforcement side of that case, separate and distinct from who the targets of their investigation were.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Okay, but you're right. There is a distinction between going after the Biden family versus going after the corruption of the bureaucracy, which gave him favorable treatment and abused whistleblowers. So that's possible, but I still don't see that as being a priority for Trump himself. Whether his attorney general would do it, but right. I don't see Trump focusing on that.
No, I don't think he needs to focus on it. Not if he puts the right person in as AG. Then let's say, for example, Senator Mike Lee do what he's going to do. Yeah, but I still don't. I just don't see it because obviously, while the attorney general is supposed to have a measure of independence
and that goes for all of them in all administrations. The reality is, to some extent, they take their cues from the priorities of the administration, despite their denying it. Okay, how could Merrick Garland had greenlit Jack Smith to do all this stuff, because he still technically supervises Jack Smith? How could all of this happen, unless he was taking his cues from the tone set by the Biden administration? So, we'll see. But
then, what's your larger thinking about addressing the lawfare of the last 4 years in terms of sort of resetting the table and the idea of equal protection under the law, as opposed to the Leventre Beria approach to the enforcement of the law?
Yeah, well, there's an emotional part of me that says that Trump should do to them what they did to him. I mean, they took his life apart and picked over it in order to find something to prosecute him on. That's most clear with the New York Attorney General and with Alvin Bragg. I mean, they somehow, through novel legal theories, resuscitated a stale misdemeanor bookkeeping entry violation, which probably never would have ever been prosecuted. That sort of stuff is really, I think he's got to put them under a microscope. He just does, because prosecutors in this country need to understand that they cannot weaponize their offices for political purposes. I mean, prosecutors have enormous power to destroy lives, and the mere indictment of somebody, the mere bringing of charges can ruin somebody's life, even if a year or two later they're thrown out. So I think an example needs to be set of these prosecutors, the ones who clearly bragged about using their office to get a political opponent. I mean, they weren't shy about it. Alvin Bragg wasn't shy about it. Letitia James wasn't shy about it. Jack Smith maybe didn't brag that way, but that whole process, the whole purpose of going after Trump on what I consider to be an invalid theory in the D.C. case, which is that he illegally conspired to overturn the election. And I've said this since day one. I've probably said it on your show multiple times. That starts from the premise that overturning an election is illegal, but it's not. It's how you overturn the election that might be illegal. Democrats try to overturn elections all the time. There are processes that can, in place to overturn an election. But so you have a conspiracy to achieve something that is not in and of itself illegal. So I've considered that D.C. case tainted, in its origins as to its main legal theory from day one. But, clearly that was politically motivated, all wrapped up in the January 6th stuff. And I think that the Florida case was a little closer to being a legitimate case in the sense that Trump did have some of these records. But that I probably never would have gotten to that level had it not been Donald Trump. It would have been worked out some other way.
Professor William Jacobson, clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation and the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Great. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
From humble small-town beginnings to Hollywood stardom and eventually the world stage, Reagan is a cinematic journey of overcoming the odds. Told through the voice of Victor Petrovich, the film offers a unique perspective. With Dennis Quaid as Reagan, this captivating story explores the profound impact of a man who defied expectations to leave an indelible mark on history. Reagan is available on digital and will be available on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital November 19th. For a chance to win a digital download, visit 560theanswer.com, keyword movie.
AM 560.